President Vladimir Putin has shaped Russia's status as a powerful military and economic nation. He demanded in the Munich Agreement, as was agreed with the West, that NATO, or the sphere of influence of the United States and Europe, would not expand eastward, and they did not uphold that agreement. They expanded and took over about 13 more countries.
Is it possible to look at this war of ours here separately from what's happening in the world? Probably not. We wanted to talk about the new world order that's taking shape and its implications with Dr. Efraim Michaeli, former IDF attaché in Russia and political and military commentator.
The world has been in a nominal order for about 80 years now, ever since World War II ended in 1945. The fronts were divided, and the good guys and the bad guys, as we chose to see it, were that the West were the good guys and the East, meaning the Soviet Union, were the bad guys. It was actually a pretty good order. Everyone controlled their own proxies. Things got mixed up when, in 1990 to 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and it fell largely with the help of the Americans and Europeans who wanted the resources, the oil and gas of this huge country, 1/6 of the earth, but they weren't able to take control of it. At first, if you remember, in the 1990s, Nixon, the Clintons, and the various Bushes really liked the Russian presidents who did whatever they wanted, like Yeltsin and others. But the moment the current president, Putin, came to power in 2000, he set a goal for himself to restore Russia to its former glory, to the status of the former Soviet Union, with nuclear weapons and with military, security, and economic power. In my opinion, I was a military attaché in 2000 in Moscow, in Russia.
Dear viewers, please note, there is currently an escalation in attempts to silence Tove Channel. Naftali Bennet is suing Tove Channel for no less than 250,000 shekels. A gag lawsuit by a former prime minister against an independent media outlet in a democratic country. This must not happen. If he wins this lawsuit, the channel, Tove Channel, might be shut down, and that's why we're raising 500,000 shekels so we can keep bringing you bold content and fight those who are trying to silence us. So, our request is, support us. All the details are in the link below the player, and we will be grateful for your support.
In my opinion, he pretty much succeeded during his rule in the first 15 years in bringing Russia from... How can I explain this to you? When I arrived in Russia in the year 2000, people were being murdered in the streets. And today it's a thriving country, a strong, powerful country, economically, despite all the sanctions the West has imposed on them. President Vladimir Putin shaped Russia's status as a powerful country, both militarily and economically. He demanded in the Munich Agreement, as was agreed with the West, that NATO or the sphere of influence of the United States and Europe would not expand eastward, and they did not stick to that agreement. They expanded and took over about 13 more countries, all the Warsaw Pact countries, which were Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Romania, Bulgaria, and some of the former Yugoslav states, which also broke up, and they reached the border of the core of the Russian, the Slavic people, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. And that's where they were supposed to stop. They didn't stop, and then there were the events in 2014, when, through a referendum or a military letter, Vladimir Putin and Russia took over Crimea. And he had his reasons. If you want, I can explain the reasons later. Without Crimea, Russia couldn't survive, because almost 70% of its navy is stationed in the Black Sea, and their home port is Sevastopol. So Sevastopol was in Ukraine's hands, whether by mistake or on purpose. That's what happened when the Soviet Union broke up, and Russia leased it for 25 years. And that's what happened. But let's get back to your question. Today, there's a desire to reorganize the world. Everyone is fed up with this mess, but the West isn't willing to give up its control. Let's break down who the West is. Who is the West? The West is the United States, the European countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, maybe South Korea and Japan. They control almost the entire global economy. They set the customs terms, the maritime transport conditions, oil and gas prices, And they set up their own clubs like the G7 and G20. And there they decide who will be rich, who will be poor. It's like our Yom Kippur prayer, who will live and who will not. And the emerging countries are not willing to agree to this anymore. For example, there are 5 countries that are members of the Security Council: the United States, Russia, China, France, and England. I'm asking, what does France have to do with it? And why isn't India in the Security Council? 1.5 billion people. Right. Why isn't Brazil in there? Right. Why isn't Iran in there? Maybe. Why isn't South Africa in there? Why not other big countries? Why isn't Germany in there? You see what I mean? And this arrangement of the Anglo-Saxons, it's really Anglo-Saxon. It's the Anglo-Saxon connection. All of Europe and America are Anglo-Saxons who, for about 1,000 years, killed each other. We learned about that in history. Later, the English and the French migrated to settle America. I wonder what they would say about that, compared to what we're doing to the Palestinians. They killed tens of millions of Native Americans, took over their property, their homes, their lands, divided it among themselves, founded Canada and the United States, and the Native Americans. They put them in reservations, without any rights, and without the ability to develop or preserve their language. And yet they preached to the whole world about the kind of democracy they invented, which to me is an incomprehensible democracy, since it's a democracy for the rich. Only the wealthy can get elected in the United States and Europe. Poor people can't get elected. Elon Musk gave $100 million as a gift to President Trump for the elections. If here someone gave just $1 million, or if in Russia Putin got $100 million from one of his oligarchs, they'd call him a dictator, or who knows what, or in China. That's why this whole system, the democratic one that the West invented, is passé. It doesn't work, and there needs to be a new world order. The question is, who will lead it? And here comes the leadership crisis. The world has no leaders or heads of state. The global leadership is disgraceful. It's weak. It's not serious. Without pointing fingers at anyone, I hope the world was run by Joe Biden for 4 years, a man who, the medication kept him going like a puppet. Clinton and Obama were behind the scenes, pulling the strings and letting him read a few speeches or participate in a few meetings under supervision. For 4 years, the world was hijacked by those two guys, Clinton and Obama and their cronies, and the world just swallowed it. And now Trump has arrived, and Trump, by comparison, is different. Physically, he's healthier, but I wouldn't entrust my fate to Trump, and I wouldn't want to be his friend or his enemy. His intentions aren't clear and his plans are unknown. He's a leader who acts on impulse and isn't consistent in his decisions, and in my opinion, every slip of the tongue that journalists catch or let him make is a journalistic gem, because if no one wrote for him what to say, and no one supervised him, then there are problems. Don't forget that. Trump receives high-ranking guests in the Oval Office. For the first time, we see the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and others sitting together. The National Security Advisor next to him, like this in press conferences. We didn't see this with previous presidents, because they don't trust Trump not to blurt things out. And usually, when another head of state meets with Trump, he lets others, his VP or the Secretary of State, Mario, or speak or to the National Security Advisor. Do you get that? That's not a leader. Yes, there are leaders, but there are only a few real leaders in the world. Viktor Orban of Hungary, President Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the people who exudes charismatic, consistent, logical, and patriotic leadership. The current president of China, Xi Jinping, is also very stable and has shaped his country, quietly leading it to a very high level in terms of economy and national security, and in other areas as well. I don't think Macron or the Prime Minister of England are real leaders. They don't even come close to ranking in the top 5, and all sorts of flowers in Europe. And a crisis of leadership has emerged, yes.
With your permission, let me take a moment and address our viewers. Dear viewers, if you don't subscribe, how will you know? Our WhatsApp group keeps you updated with the hottest clips from our interviews, and the link to join is right below the player. So, back to our topic. Where is the new world order in all this chaos, Ephraim?
The emerging world order is, first of all, about the wars, Yehezkeli. The wars between Russia and Ukraine, between Israel and the Arabs here, including Iran, the Houthis, and all their various proxies. They're all connected to each other. Ukraine is backed by the West and the United States, and so is Israel, even though up until this war, Israel actually played quite skillfully between the Eastern and Western blocs. That was until Joe Biden came to Israel and his don't basically forced Israel to take the American Western side. Otherwise, they threatened us with an arms embargo, and we basically got swallowed up into the Western bloc. But in the East, there's a war going on in Eastern Europe, Ukraine and Russia. Russia, with no other choice, was forced to turn to Iran and North Korea for help with ammunition, since it was in a catastrophic situation in this war, especially when it comes to drones, UAVs, and all kinds of weapons and rockets that are heavily used in this war in Ukraine. And that's what led to the shift where Iran was pushed toward the Russia-China alliance. They created a new bloc of countries as a response to the G7 or NATO bloc, which is the BRICS countries. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, and Iran. These are the countries that form the BRICS bloc. They're considering creating their own new currency and a clearing and money transfer system, which is the Achilles heel of the world, because whoever controls the transfer of funds and all transactions through the clearing system is the United States and Europe, along with their allies. That's why the leaders emerging right now are President Putin, the President of China, the President of Brazil, the President of South Africa, maybe also Ali Khamenei from Iran, and they're trying to bring India in as well. India is kind of playing both sides between the Western and Eastern blocs, because on one hand, India wants to be on the side of the United States and the West, but they don't see the United States and the West as being able to protect them from other countries, from China and Pakistan and others. But already, they're giving and pushing gas and oil to India at outrageous discounts of 70% off the global market price, and India is forced to take it, because they have to feed 1.5 billion people, most of whom are homeless, most of whom are living under the open sky. So the leaders who are emerging for the future are Trump, the president of Russia, the president of China, Netanyahu, and a few other leaders. But there will be a unique, unified management group, a new Security Council that will be formed with either 11 or 15 countries. Inside, there will be Germany, definitely Japan and India, and Brazil. And the main question is whether there will be chemistry between the leaders in the end, because in my opinion, everything depends on chemistry. When Trump came to power, he basically gave the president of Russia a carte blanche that no one would have expected. He basically told him, I'm abandoning Ukraine. Take all the territories you captured in eastern Ukraine. You created a territorial corridor from the Crimean Peninsula through Kherson, through Mariupol, through Donetsk and Luhansk. Take them, they're yours. Just sign a ceasefire and peace agreement. And here President Putin, the president of Russia, made a mistake. Under pressure from his group and from BRICS, who wanted to achieve more, they refused the ceasefire. And in recent days, we can see just how intense the fighting is there. Ukraine's attacks have really been compared to the Dnipro attacks by Israelis. They bombed 4 airports inside Russia, at distances of up to 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers from Ukraine's border, using drones, and they bombed strategic aircraft capable of carrying nuclear weapons over long ranges. An extraordinary operation 2 weeks ago. A real sensation. And the Russians are hitting Odessa, Kiev, and also civilian populations with all their weapons, and there's no decision there, just like it is here. The Israel Defense Forces have not managed to defeat Hamas. At first, we called them terrorists, then we called them battalions, and then we called them brigade commanders. If there were brigade commanders and battalion commanders like that, then they were a whole army. So why do they say that in Gaza there are only terrorist gangs, terrorist organizations? Gaza was a state that had an army. Imagine 40,000 fighters on paper. That's basically 100 battalions. 100 battalions. It could be that in Israel there aren't even 100 infantry battalions. Right, they had 100 battalions, armed from head to toe with RPGs. Without planes, true, and without tanks, but they wreaked havoc on us. They conquered Israel on October 7, 2023. They murdered 1,200 people, and to this day we have sacrificed 868 soldiers. And we still can't manage to defeat them or bring back the hostages and the bodies there. And on top of that, we're begging, through the aid that this so-called enlightened world that the Anglo-Saxons created, as I said, forcing us to give food to the enemy, something that has never happened before, ever, in the history of nations, in the history of wars. Not Hitler, not Stalin, not Alexander the Great, not Arab sheiks. No one, not even Napoleon, ever gave food to their enemy or talked to them like, let's talk about a ceasefire, come do this for me. It's just like a total failure, a complete political and military failure. So the Russians are the only ones who can really pull the Iranians by the ear into a new agreement. And then maybe they'll agree to sign on to non-proliferation of nuclear weapons or to stop producing nuclear weapons. But in my opinion, not through negotiations with the United States or the pressures that the US is supposedly threatening them with. The Iranians won't put their nuclear weapons aside and won't stop their production. That's my opinion. That's why people are expecting a new world order, where Russia and China will be able to talk to the President of the United States. But in my opinion now, my opinion is fading. I brought up Putin, who is really waiting for Donald Trump to come to power, after all his shenanigans and after all the things he said and did. The stock market rises, the stock market falls, Elon Musk, and all sorts of statements like this and that. In my opinion, Putin started to lose respect for President Trump, and I'm afraid the war is getting further from ending and won't stop anytime soon. That's my opinion.
Former IDF attaché in Russia. Political and military analyst Dr. Efraim Michaeli. Thank you very much for a fascinating conversation, and we'll wait and see where this new world order will lead us.
A strong Israel in this region will be the strong backbone for Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and other nations. Similarly, Russia has left the BRICS countries, and they support it, while the United States is in conflict with its main allies in Europe and doesn't have new allies. It's like America has left, abandoned NATO and Ukraine, and created a new chaos. So why should they bow to the Americans, the Iranians, or the Russians? Because the Americans are on their own. They say, me, I'm only for myself. And here's the paradigm. It seems that the end of the wars, both here and in Europe, is moving further away, and apparently a peace agreement is not likely to come anytime soon.
Dr. Efraim Michaeli, thank you very much.
Dear viewers, please note, there is currently an escalation in attempts to silence Tov Channel. Naftali Bennet is suing Tov Channel for no less than 250,000 shekels. A gag lawsuit by a former prime minister against an independent media outlet in a democratic country. This must not happen. If he wins this lawsuit, the channel, Tov Channel, might be shut down, and that's why we're raising 500,000 shekels so we can keep bringing you bold content and fight those who are trying to silence us. So, our request is, support us. All the details are in the link below the player, and we will be grateful for your support.